In recent weeks, a series of revelations have emerged regarding the intriguing connections between Prince Andrew and Chinese President Xi Jinping, raising eyebrows and prompting speculation about the implications of such ties. These developments come against a backdrop of heightened tensions in global geopolitical relations, making the royals' alleged role as a conduit to Beijing particularly notable. Documents recently uncovered during ongoing legal proceedings reveal that Prince Andrew maintained a significant level of communication with Xi, particularly after stepping back from royal duties. Central to this web of interactions is Yang Tengbo, an individual described as a close associate of the Duke of York and purportedly linked to Chinese espionage activities. According to Prince Andrew's senior advisor Dominic Hampshire, the Duke has served as a valuable communication point to Xi, a perspective allegedly supported by the late Queen Elizabeth II, who reportedly viewed these exchanges as strategically beneficial. "I maintain and believe that the Duke must surely be a valuable communication point with China," Hampshire stated in a witness statement, suggesting that Andrew's unique position offered an informal channel to the Chinese leadership. This connection was further leveraged through initiatives like Pitch at Palace China, which aim to foster investment from China in various sectors. One of the key projects connected to Andrew is the Eurasia Fund, intended to attract investment for renewable energy projects across Africa. Although the fund has yet to become operational, it has drawn significant interest, particularly given Andrew's connections that hint at high-level backing. Despite the ambitious goals, Hampshire described the letters exchanged between the Duke and Xi as a top-level nothingness, emphasizing the need for discretion in maintaining these communications. The situation took a serious turn in November 2021 when British intelligence agency MI5 intercepted Yang at a UK airport, raising alarms about the potential security implications of his close relationship with the Duke. Following the interception, MI5 officials expressed their concerns about Yang's influence over Andrew, but stopped short of demanding that the Duke sever ties with him. "No, I can't ask you to stop," an MI5 officer reportedly told Andrew's aides, acknowledging the complexity of the relationships at play. As the scrutiny intensified, it became clear that the Duke's reputation had suffered irreparably following his infamous 2019 BBC interview, which left him with few options for public engagement. Hampshire noted that the royal household had reached a consensus that Andrew's image was irrecoverable, forcing him to explore discreet business ventures that would not attract media attention. Yet, as new revelations unfold, the implications of his interactions with Chinese officials continue to resonate, prompting questions about the monarchy's role in international relations. While the documents paint a picture of a complex and often secretive relationship, they also reveal the lengths to which Prince Andrew and his advisors have gone to maintain these connections in the face of public scrutiny. As the global landscape shifts, the ramifications of these ties, especially in light of increasing tensions between the West and China, may become even more significant. In conclusion, the evolving narrative surrounding Prince Andrew and his relationship with Xi Jinping underscores the intricate dynamics of diplomacy and personal connections at the highest levels of power. As investigations continue and more details emerge, the potential for future developments remains high. This situation serves as a reminder of the delicate balance between royal duties, personal ambitions, and international relations, an intersection that will undoubtedly attract ongoing attention in the months to come. In recent weeks, the geopolitical landscape in Southeast Asia has become increasingly complex, particularly with the expansion of China's influence through strategic partnerships with countries like Cambodia. This development was highlighted on April 5, 2025, when Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet inaugurated an expansion of the Ream naval base, a project that has drawn scrutiny from the United States and other nations due to concerns over China's growing military presence in the region. The Ream naval base, located on the Gulf of Thailand, has undergone significant upgrades, including the construction of a new pier capable of accommodating larger naval vessels and a dry dock for repairs. This expansion is part of a broader pattern of military cooperation between Cambodia and China, which has been characterized by investments and infrastructure development. During the inauguration ceremony, Prime Minister Monet expressed gratitude for China's support, reaffirming the strength of bilateral relations ahead of a planned visit from Chinese President Xi Jinping. However, this growing partnership has raised alarms in Washington, particularly given suspicions that Cambodia has subtly granted China exclusive access to the naval facility. While Cambodian officials have denied these claims, asserting that the base will remain open to warships from all friendly nations, analysts believe the geopolitical implications are significant. Ewan Graham, a senior defense analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, noted that the presence of Japanese naval vessels at the base, which is anticipated in the near future, could be a deliberate attempt by Cambodia to project an image of openness to military cooperation beyond its ties with China. The U.S. has been closely monitoring these developments. Charges of potential Chinese military exploitation of Cambodian territory echo previous concerns about Beijing's influence in the region. In 2019, reports suggested that a draft agreement would allow China to use the base for military purposes, potentially including the stationing of personnel and the storage of weapons. Although Cambodia's defense ministry has since stated that no plans exist for a permanent Chinese military presence, the expansion's timing and scale continue to fuel speculation. As Cambodia embraces deeper ties with its powerful neighbor, the implications extend beyond mere military cooperation. The expansion of the Reen naval base signals a shift in the balance of power in Southeast Asia, where countries are increasingly navigating the complex dynamics of U.S.-China relations. The strategic positioning of military assets in the region could influence maritime security and diplomatic relations for years to come. Prime Minister Monet's assertions about non-exclusivity at the Reen base, while intended to allay international concerns, suggest a delicate balancing act. As Cambodia enhances its military capabilities with Chinese support, it simultaneously seeks to maintain relationships with other nations, particularly Japan and the U.S. The challenge will be ensuring that these relationships do not become overshadowed by the burgeoning partnership with China. In the context of this evolving geopolitical landscape, the actions of leaders like Monet and Xi Jinping are under intense scrutiny. Both leaders are navigating their nation's aspirations amid the realities of international power dynamics. As the situation at the Reen naval base develops, it remains to be seen how Cambodia will manage its partnerships and whether it can maintain a neutral stance while engaging with both China and the West. Looking ahead, the future of Cambodia's military and diplomatic posture will likely hinge on its ability to leverage its relationships with multiple powers without alienating any single partner. The coming months, particularly with the anticipated visit from Xi Jinping, will be critical in shaping the trajectory of Cambodia's international relations and its role in the broader Southeast Asian geopolitical landscape. As the global trade landscape shifts dramatically, China is positioning itself as a key player amidst escalating tensions stemming from U.S. tariffs and a growing isolationist stance from Washington. With the recent increase in tariffs, President Donald Trump has intensified economic pressure on China, raising the stakes in an already contentious trade war. This has prompted China's leadership to pivot towards strengthening diplomatic and trade relations with other nations, particularly in Asia and Europe, in a bid to mitigate the adverse effects of U.S. policies. Xi Jinping, China's president, recently sent a letter to Indian President Draupadi Murmu suggesting a collaborative approach to celebrate 75 years of trade between the two nations. In his communiqué, Xi described the partnership as the Dragon-Elephant Tango, emphasizing mutual benefits for both countries. This overture is part of a broader strategy by Beijing to divert exports from the U.S. to other markets as tariffs imposed by the Trump administration rise sharply, recently doubling to an effective average rate of 65%. Analysts argue that such tariffs could render many Chinese goods uncompetitive, pushing the country to explore alternative trade partnerships. In response to these tariffs, China's finance ministry announced its own retaliatory measures, imposing a 34% increase to tariffs on U.S. goods effective April 10. The immediate reaction in financial markets was one of concern, with investors fearing a potential recession in the U.S. as companies brace for the economic fallout. The ramifications of this trade war extend beyond mere tariffs as global supply chains and investment flows are increasingly disrupted. The trade conflict has stimulated a wave of speculation regarding China's ability to navigate this challenging environment. Observers note that the U.S., in its attempt to diminish China's economic influence, risks realigning global trade in favor of authoritarian regimes, thereby inadvertently strengthening China's position in various markets. The economic landscape is further complicated by the emergence of companies like BYD, which has surpassed Tesla to become a leading manufacturer of electric vehicles and is now eyeing expansion into Europe. Despite existing tariffs from the EU and UK. Former UK Treasury Minister Jim O'Neill has suggested that countries outside the US should consider forming closer trade ties with China as a counterbalance to Trump's aggressive tariff policies. He argues that the remaining G7 nations, collectively as large as the U.S. economy, should engage in dialogue aimed at reducing trade barriers among themselves, thus fostering a more stable global trading environment. The European Union, which currently receives more goods from China than the U.S., may also find itself compelled to reassess its trade policies in light of the ongoing tariff disputes. Christopher Dent, an economics professor, posits that Trump's tariffs may catalyze stronger trade alliances between countries like the EU and China, spurring a fundamental shift in global trade dynamics. The EU's Trade and Economic Security Commissioner Maros Sefcovic has indicated that more open trade relations with China could be contingent on achieving symmetrical trade flows and investments. China's charm offensive is not limited to Europe. It extends to its neighbors as well. With Vietnam facing significant tariffs from the U.S., 46% on its exports, some analysts believe this situation could push Hanoi closer to Beijing. Vietnam's economy, heavily reliant on exports to the U.S., faces immediate challenges which may prompt it to reconsider its strategic alliances in light of the changing geopolitical landscape. As the trade war escalates, China appears to be preparing for a more significant domestic focus, with analysts predicting an expansion of economic stimulus measures to support its economy. With exports to the U.S. constituting a small fraction of China's overall economic output, the Chinese government may increasingly turn to domestic consumption as a growth driver. The prospect of a rapprochement with the U.S. remains elusive, especially as the Trump administration continues to impose tariffs and barriers against Chinese goods. The situation has left China with few reliable partners willing to absorb its exports previously destined for the U.S. market. While there have been efforts by Chinese officials to promote cooperation based on a rules-based international trading system, skepticism about China's reliability as a trade partner persists in many quarters. As global tensions unfold, the future of trade relations will likely hinge on China's ability to navigate these challenges while fostering new alliances. The coming months will be critical as Beijing intensifies its diplomatic outreach and ramps up domestic economic stimulus efforts, seeking to bolster its position in a rapidly evolving global market. With the potential for increased collaboration among non-U.S. nations, the geopolitical landscape may witness a significant realignment, reshaping the contours of international trade as we know it. In an increasingly tense geopolitical landscape, recent developments surrounding Taiwan and China have ignited speculation and concern among military and political analysts. As Taiwan embarks on its largest annual military drills, the Hanquang exercises, experts underscore that these extended wargames reflect a direct response to China's escalating military presence and gray zone tactics, actions that provoke without crossing the threshold into open conflict. The exercises, which commenced on April 5, 2025, are particularly noteworthy not just for their scale but for their focus on a potential Chinese invasion scenario projected for 2027. Major General Tung Chi-shing, director of the Ministry of National Defense's Joint Operations Planning Division, highlighted that the drills will simulate scenarios where the frequent military exercises conducted by the People's Liberation Army (PLA) escalate into an actual attack on Taiwan. The Hanquang wargames will also simulate PLA gray zone activities, he stated, underscoring the need for Taiwan's military to prepare for a range of provocations that could precede a full-scale invasion. The significance of the 2025 Hankuang exercises extends beyond mere military preparation. They are a strategic move in the face of increasing Chinese assertiveness in the region. This year's drills will last 2 weeks, significantly longer than the 8 days allotted in 2024, signaling a shift in Taiwan's military approach. Legislator Yang Tengbo remarked on the changing dynamics, noting that the public's perception of what a first strike might entail has evolved. Rather than a conventional missile attack, experts now suggest that initial hostilities could involve maritime militias, drones, or other non-traditional military assets typically associated with gray zone operations. In addition to the Hankuang exercises, the political atmosphere surrounding Taiwan is marked by heightened tensions and military posturing from China. The PLA recently conducted large-scale joint military exercises around Taiwan, simulating a blockade and integrated operations across multiple military branches. This normalization of military drills is perceived as both a demonstration of capability and a psychological tactic aimed at intimidating Taiwan's government and populace. The upcoming year 2027 has emerged as a focal point for analysts, perceived as a potential flashpoint for military action. This year marks several significant anniversaries for China, including the 100th anniversary of the PLA and the beginning of President Xi Jinping's fourth term, which may incentivize aggressive actions. Experts like Su Tsuyun from Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research have emphasized that these exercises are not merely a response to current events but are strategically planned with the future in mind, particularly regarding Taiwan's defense readiness against an anticipated invasion. Meanwhile, the geopolitical ramifications are not limited to Taiwan alone. Across Southeast Asia, Cambodia's recent expansion of its main naval base with substantial support from China raises alarms among regional observers. Analysts speculate that the upgraded facility, which includes a new pier and dry dock, could serve as a strategic outpost for Chinese military operations in the Gulf of Thailand. Prime Minister Han Min's assurances that the base will remain open to friendly nations, including Japan, may reflect an attempt to mitigate concerns about China's growing influence in the region after the U.S. expressed apprehension over the potential military use of the base. As these developments unfold, the broader implications for U.S.-China relations and regional stability remain profound. The U.S. has been vocal about its commitment to enhancing defense cooperation with Taiwan and its allies, including the Philippines, where additional missile systems are being deployed amid rising tensions in the South China Sea. This backdrop of military readiness and strategic alliances underscores a pivotal moment in the Asia-Pacific, where the intersection of military preparedness and diplomatic posturing will shape the future of cross-strait relations and regional security. In conclusion, as Taiwan fortifies its defenses through extensive military exercises and grapples with the implications of a potential Chinese invasion, the international community watches closely. The evolving military dynamics, combined with diplomatic maneuvers in the region, suggest that the coming years will be critical in determining the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific. The situation remains fluid, and analysts assert that both Taiwan and its allies must remain vigilant and prepared as the specter of conflict looms ever closer. As tensions rise in the Taiwan Strait, the implications of U.S.-China relations are becoming increasingly complex, particularly under the shadow of recent military exercises and diplomatic maneuvering. On April 1, China executed a significant military encirclement of Taiwan, marking the fifth such exercise since U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to the island in 2022 and the third since Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te assumed office. This escalation comes at a time when the political interplay between the United States and China is becoming more fraught, raising questions about the future of diplomatic engagements, including a potential summit between President Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping. The military exercises are seen as a direct response to what Beijing perceives as provocative rhetoric from Taiwan's leadership, particularly as Lai prepares for his anniversary speech on May 20. Analysts suggest that should Lai reiterate positions that anger Beijing, it could trigger another round of military posturing or even a more aggressive approach, potentially involving incursions into Taiwan's territorial waters or airspace. This routine display of military might serves not only as a warning to Taiwan but also as a means for China to assert its influence in the region. Interestingly, the U.S. response has been characterized by a strategy of avoidance, with U.S. aircraft carriers such as the USS Carl Vinson deliberately steering clear of the Taiwan Strait during these exercises. As the only U.S. carrier currently deployed in the Pacific, its movements are closely watched, and its absence during Chinese drills signals a cautious approach amid rising tensions. Taiwanese sentiment reflects a sense of resilience as citizens appear largely unfazed by the military posturing, viewing it as part of a long-standing rivalry without rupture between the U.S. and China. The dynamics of this rivalry are further complicated by the political climate in the U.S., where figures like Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are advocating for a more hawkish stance toward China. Their rhetoric aligns with Trump's broader strategy of negotiating through conflict, suggesting that the current tensions might serve as a precursor to a summit aimed at striking a deal rather than provoking outright confrontation. The question remains whether Li's actions are fully aligned with U.S. interests, as there is a risk that Taiwan could misinterpret U.S. signals and escalate tensions further. On the Chinese side, the timing of military responses has shifted, with a noticeable delay in reaction to Taipei's provocative statements. This change suggests a strategic prioritization of economic revitalization over immediate military aggression, as Xi Jinping seeks to balance internal stability with assertive foreign policy. The Chinese leadership is acutely aware that military exercises, while necessary for demonstrating strength, must not undermine ongoing efforts to attract foreign investment and maintain economic growth. Moreover, the military drills are not mere theatrics. Each exercise enhances China's operational capabilities around Taiwan while simultaneously countering U.S. arms sales, which are intended to bolster Taiwan's defense. The potential for a blockade looms large, as demonstrated by recent incidents where Taiwan's natural gas transport vessels faced restrictions. Underlining the strategic choke points China could exploit in a conflict scenario. The U.S. has its own stakes in this intricate chess game. Arms sales to Taiwan are designed to complicate any Chinese military action, aiming to ensure that any conflict would be resource draining for Beijing. However, should Taiwan take aggressive measures such as launching missiles at the mainland, it would likely be interpreted as a declaration of war, drawing U.S. forces into a precarious situation. The implications of these developments extend beyond immediate military concerns. Trump's self-styled approach of negotiation through controlled conflict suggests that both he and Xi are incentivized to seek a resolution at the negotiating table rather than through military confrontation. Yet the challenge is whether Xi will view U.S. overtures as genuine or as a provocation, especially given the complexities of domestic sentiment within China. As the international community watches closely, the prospect of a U.S.-China summit hinges on both leaders' willingness to navigate these treacherous waters without miscalculation. Should Trump and Xi meet, it could either pave the way for a new diplomatic framework or exacerbate existing tensions, depending on how both sides interpret the signals being sent from Taipei and Washington. In conclusion, the evolving situation in the Taiwan Strait illustrates the delicate balance of power at play between the U.S. and China. As both nations navigate their respective domestic and international challenges, the potential for missteps remains high, underscoring the need for careful diplomacy in an increasingly polarized geopolitical landscape. The coming months will be critical, as both leaders must weigh the advantages of negotiation against the risks of confrontation, with Taiwan serving as a pivotal battleground for their strategic interests.